Welcome to the Ricky Mathews Show. I hope you had a great weekend, and thank you for joining us on SuperTalk Radio or on Facebook or YouTube or your favorite podcast or SuperTalk TV or I don't know. Maybe there are other ways you can join us, but we have had tremendous success with the show as more and more people engage with it, and as we continue to have important conversations about coast of Mississippi and the state of Mississippi and some really cool leaders who are making a real difference. We're going to be coming to my friend Hunter Dawkins here in just a second, who's the owner and publisher of the Gazebo Gazette. I ran across a quote in my history book that I just wanted to share with you. And there were a couple of really important things that happened in September that we're looking back historically. Well, actually, one of them was the British cultural icon and model, Twiggy. You know, younger folks may not remember Twiggy, but I certainly remember Twiggy. And one of the things that she said was this, that being young isn't about age. It's about being a free spirit, and certainly Twiggy was that. I feel like I'm a free spirit. I know how old I am. I certainly know how old I am. But I don't approach my life as someone who sees me as being an older person. I feel like I'm very young at heart, actually. And so when I read quotes like that, being young isn't about age, it's about being a free spirit. I get that. I guess in some respects, I'm also a bit of a free spirit. And that's just, I think that's the way to approach life, man. You just, you never know. You never know what tomorrow is going to bring. So you better take it all in as you enjoy this moment. Listen, let's shift gears now, move it over to my friend Hunter Dawkins, who is the award-winning publisher at the Gazebo Gazette and here in coastal Mississippi, and a major contributor, I might add, to SuperTalk Mississippi News, and someone I enjoy really checking in with. How you doing, Hunter?
Ricky, I'm doing well, and I thank you very much. I hope you and Ann are doing well, and all the kids and everything else. It's getting to be that nice fall weather now. The last couple of days, it's been really cool outside, and that's I think Mississippians are more appreciative of this now. So.
Well, listen, Hunter and I are actually recording this a couple of days before Monday, so it's important to point that out. We don't have the benefit of knowing how the Green Bay Saints game turned out. We actually may even do a little bit of speculating about how it turned out, but there's some general themes from the Saints game that we'll talk about. Hunter has the opportunity to go cover the Saints, and we'll talk about that. He's also doing color for Gulfport High games, which I don't know how he finds time to do it, but here on Super Talk, and we'll talk about how that gig is going. So it's tough because Gulfport's got a good team, but they've lost a couple of really close ones. I know it's heartbreaking for Gulfport High followers, and there's a lot of other things that we're going to catch up on, the latest in his news world, etc. But I said award-winning, man. I congratulate you on continuing to be recognized as a terrific small newspaper publisher. I can't tell you how proud I am of you, my friend.
Well, Ricky, I thank you very much. Lynn Lance, the National Newspaper Association executive director, who actually lives in Pensacola, she and I have gained a really good friendship, and they do quite a number of things it's more for the small community newspapers than just a regular Mississippi Press Association who has to see for all the papers, whereas opposed to the National Newspaper Association sees hundreds of newspapers all across the United States, and they do their best to help not only out with needs from personal things as far as classifieds and legals, but what they do is they help out the newspaper industry in Washington, which is the most important thing, at least from our perspective as journalists. So.
Yeah, NAA, the Newspaper Association of America, the Newspaper Association, NAA is what NNA, Newspaper.
Yeah.
National Newspaper Association, I guess that's the way to say it.
That's
okay.
Right. Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've said that phrase, but I was active in NNA for many years when I was a publisher, going to the annual publishers meetings, etc. I've lost touch with him since I retired, of course. So for I haven't really heard or discussed much about him since 2016.
The state
But
of
I can
Mississippi,
only, huh?
the state of Mississippi only has, I think they had an executive director, or they had a board of directors president that left last year. He was the former Brookhaven Daily Leader publisher, way back in the day. But that's before everything got really situated. So.
I bet, man, that organization has changed dramatically in just the last 5 years.
Huge. Everything is online now, pretty much, and they still send out it's called the Pub Auxiliary every month. Just a discussion about what's going on in the national news. But other than that, everything you can actually see that online, and everything pretty much is going to the digital, just like we know as the newspaper industry has gone.
Listen, when I was in operations, I spent some time on the operations side of the newspaper. Roland Weeks, my former boss and my mentor, wanted me to get as much experience from every aspect of the newspaper. So one of the things he did was name me the operations director, and I had the responsibility for installing a new printing press and overseeing a major project to add to the Sun Herald building, and got really active in what is called the Rockwell International Users Group. The GOS, it's the name of the press that they published, or that they produced, and actually became president of the users group, the National Users Group. And I think I may have mentioned this to you before, but when I became the president of the group, I found out that they never actually incorporated. So as a result of not being incorporated, they didn't have insurance for the organization. So if something were to happen on the board of directors, we were very vulnerable, actually. So I took steps to get the organization incorporated, and it was incorporated in Gulfport, Mississippi, this national newspaper organization. But it was an international users group. These printing presses were sent all over the world, and they were made in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and of course visited the printing plant, the production plant for these printing facilities on a regular basis. And we talk about NNA, the opportunity to go to their production meeting, their annual production meeting. Sure. Man, they used to have vendors from all over the world there, and I don't know how many thousands and thousands of people. All of that, I'm sure, is no more.
I have not been to an annual convention where where they do present the awards. If you're there, but I have not been to the convention yet. But Lynn, of course, is trying to convince me to. But they have, like you said, with the conventions, they have tons of vendors, not only with things that you can put in the paper, but other resources that you can use for the paper, and a lot of material things that definitely helps with the paper industry. And their fight is the biggest fight for the newspaper industry right now, from the NNA perspective, is with the post office, because they're trying to get the periodicals to where they're not charging them overly for a certain amount. Well, for me, it's not as bad as for everybody else, because I don't necessarily have the size of circulation, although I do have a pretty large circulation, because obviously I was delivered the Harrison County delinquent taxes, so the tax collector felt important about that. But set that aside, though, it's really talking about newspaper industries with over 5,000 periodicals, and with the permits they have to get to the post office, which is tough.
Well, you see, Sun Herald's moving away from carrier delivery into post office delivery, and newspapers across the country are going to do it. That's a really important thing that's happening there. It'd be interesting too. I had the opportunity to join Paul Gallo within the past week, and we talked about the lawsuit against Google that the Justice Department's got out there now. Yep. That Google, through its relationship with Apple, especially Apple, but others as well, have created an unfair advantage by paying billions of dollars to be sort of the automatic load on the search capability.
Well, and Google won't tell you that they're not against print, right. but what they're doing is showing that they're not for print, which is also kind of ironic for me, because, a lot of the stories I put out are shared by Google through Newsbreak,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
I'm happy about that because that broadens the perspective. But then again, I'm not necessarily behind it 100% because of what the monopoly they're leading to.
Yeah, what's going to be interesting about it is that I feel this way about the federal government, whether it on any aspect of ad tech, excuse me, not ad tech, but of big tech. I'll come back to ad tech in a second, but as it relates to big tech, that the federal government's been slow to respond, and there's this fine line between enabling innovation and also paying attention to the monopolistic practices, because innovation can tend to be just one company that's really found some really incredible technology that enables them to have a monopolistic position. It's been, the federal government's really struggled with this. There's actually another lawsuit from Gazette dealing with ad tech, and I'll mention that in a second. It'd be interesting to see if the associations of newspapers eventually join into some of this stuff, because there's a lot at stake. There really is. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation with Hunter Dawkins. Welcome back to the Ricky Mathews Show. I have my friend Hunter Dawkins, who's the owner and publisher of the Gazebo Gazette here in coastal Mississippi and a major contributor to SuperTalk Mississippi News. And he also does color for Gulfport High games, and we're going to cover all that before it's said and done. But before we went to break, though, Hunter, you and I were chatting a little bit about the lawsuit related to Google. And I tell you what, when I think about Google and the ascension of Google and the ascension of search and how they did it on the backs of newspapers by giving so they say they're not in the content business, they're in the technology business, but they used our content to make their search engines successful. And newspaper, you see, like newspaper on the technological side, newspapers lost just about every way there was, at the end of the day.
And Ricky, I'm not sure if you remember this. I mean, I'm sure you do remember it, but it's really right at the time of my birth, which was when they had the Robert Bork scenario where he promoted large businesses because little businesses would fall under. And that's something that Google has been using in their legal case with this, because they're saying, well, they have over 90%, I think 92% of people that use them for search engines on the internet, which is understandable. I mean, myself uses them quite often, but that scenario, well, if we're going to, we need to promote these large businesses because the little guys will follow. And that's not something that was set up in the past with antitrust law, but yet Google is trying to use that now in the class action lawsuit.
Well, we know the search engines. We know that they're Google, they're Yahoo. Of course, you've got Bing and DuckDuckGo, and then you got another one called Ecosia, ECOSIA, and they give their revenue to planting trees around the world. Okay, so those are the ones, but the default is to Google, and that's where the lawsuit centers around. And essentially what Google will say is that Google is ubiquitous. They're actually a verb. Google is a verb, and they're successful because people have gone to them. But see, what the Justice Department is going to say is that Google spent billions of dollars creating, paying Apple to create for themselves a preferred position, to have them be the default, and we're not told that when we get our phone. So in other words, when you set up an iPhone, it should give you the preference on what your search is going to be. So if you want it to be Google, you can click on that, or you can you can actually go into the settings and change this. But their point and Google's argument will be just that, in fact. But what the argument is that they created this behemoth of a company around this unfair advantage. The problem with and the Justice Department may prevail. I don't know what the outcome will be, though. If Google loses, what is the outcome? They put the preferences in? I don't know, because they've already created a scenario where they have won the search situation significantly.
Well, Ricky, if Google loses this, what's going to happen to other search industries, like, for instance, Wikipedia and other things that are, coincidental with Google and
Yeah.
with Apple as well. How are they going to make those adjustments? That's the important question.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting. But what's interesting though, if you look at where we are now with artificial intelligence coming on strong, and all the work of OpenAI and how that's come to us in chat boxes, and we're gonna start seeing Google's going to have their own search capability, excuse me, their own AI capability soon. When you start looking at that essentially what's happening, I've talked a lot about on the show that people are going to start searching less as more and more people go to chat box, and they're going to let artificial intelligence do the work for them. So instead of me having to go to a bunch of different search results and study each one of them, what the chat box does is they go to all those search results and give you the best possible answer from that myriad of thinking from around the world. It's incredible.
As you and I know, we've seen those movies, The Minority Report and all the rest of those. Is that going to be something that eventually comes up to us? Or one of the movies my dad first shows me, Stanley Kubrick's, the AI. So
yeah. Well, it's going to be interesting. Again, I think the Justice Department, hopefully they're building their capacity, their big tech capacity inside their organization to be able to understand the ramifications of all they're going to be doing. I still think that the government should have a role in social media. There's too much silencing of voices that are taking place, and here you have Elon Musk trying to do something about it, and of course he gets, people don't like him because it depends on what side of the ledger you're on, whether you like him or not. And then then you've got this lawsuit from Gazette. I still think one of the largest newspaper owners in the United States, around ad tech and how Google uses ad tech and how they've blocked publishers out of the ability to be able to sell their content. They're sort of forced to work through them to do so much. That's going to be an interesting case, and I actually think that under that particular case, that Gazette has a really strong case, and you'll see, I think, more people joining them as that case goes forward. But the world that we were in, man, the world that you found your niche, but so many of these cases affect even the small newspaper's ability to be successful, Hunter. There's no doubt about it.
Absolutely. And, even like you said with the higher end, this comes, it's a domino effect. It eventually comes down towards my industry, and, it's affecting what I do, even, when I publish online, stories and things as such. It's going to definitely be interesting, and I can't wait to hear what that case comes out to.
Well, see, it's been over 25 years since we've seen a big tech Justice Department action, and the last time that happened was Microsoft back in the 1990s, and it was centered around the Internet Explorer situation. So this case is going to cause that to pale in comparison, and the ramifications, we still don't quite understand what the ramifications are going to be, but it's a very significant case. And the federal government's got to get their arms around this stuff. As it relates specifically to AI, I've been following AI for many years, and Elon Musk was talking about AI many years ago before it was the cool thing to talk about. And what he said essentially was this: he has very significant concerns about where machine learning can take us, and just like there is an FAA, a Federal Aviation Administration, over flying, there needs to be a similar federal organization over AI. Now, the problem with that is that we could do that in America, where a lot of this innovation is occurring, but that doesn't mean that China's going to hold to those rules, or that Russia's going to hold to those rules. So sure. A bad actor will be able to use AI in the future in ways we can't even imagine right now. So this whole notion of big tech is a scary thing. Hey, let's move to something a little bit easier to get your head around. You're doing color now for Gulfport High Games. This is the new relationship between you and your partner there and SuperTalk. How's it going?
It's going well. Harold is a great, coming from West Harrison, being the PA for a pretty lengthy time, and really being involved with the school and athletics and all, coming from that perspective. And then for me, coming to the sort of the backwards talk, show about either before the game or after, and it's really working well for both of us. And from what I understand and from the thoughts that I've been hearing, is it's good. It's been really good.
And so it's been disappointing, sadly, for Gulfport High because they went into the season with great expectations, and they have a really good team, don't they?
Well, they had a great team, and I don't necessarily want to say, anything negative about Gulfport yet because they haven't even started district play, and they've, like I said, Ricky, they played two of the top teams in the state of Mississippi. I mean, if not, the best. They've, of course, in Oak Grove, they played them in Jamboree, and it was literally 3 games that they've played where every game was a close game, and it's just a little bit more of a conjunction because Blake is a new coach, and the players have to get adjusted. They have to figure out how things are going to happen on the field, and I look forward to them taking advantage of that in the future. And this is our first road game this week. We have to drive all the way up to Brandon, and that's gonna be interesting right there. So.
My son-in-law Keith Williams went to school with Blake, and I think maybe they were even roommates.
Okay.
And he thinks the world of him. He says it's terrific leader and coach, and Gulfport's got a lot to look forward to.
Yeah, and Blake and I have been friends for a little while back when I was coaching, and then also once he became the coach over here at Pass back in 2019, he and I really sat down and we had a lot of good conversations, and we had a lot of discussion about, what you're going to do here, what you're going to do there. And he obviously was very successful with Pass as they won their first playoff game in the history of the program.
While we don't have the benefit of knowing, because we're pre-recording this for Monday, we don't have the benefit of knowing how the Saints game went. When we come back after this break, Hunter Dawkins and I are going to chat a little bit about the way the season for the Saints has gotten started. Hunter covers the team and has watched them every step of the way, and it'd be interesting. We'll actually make a prediction on the Green Bay game and see, because you have the benefit of knowing how this turned out. We'll see you after this break with Hunter Dawkins. Welcome back to the Ricky Mathews Show. I have my friend Hunter Dawkins. I love checking in with Hunter, just a passionate newspaper publisher that's got his fingers in just so many different things. He's a multimedia leader, literally. Big-time contributor to SuperTalk Mississippi News, and he's doing a gig now for SuperTalk where he's doing color for Gulfport High games. And he covers professional sports. I mean, he's spends a lot of time over in New Orleans, and he's watched the Saints. We've talked a lot about the Saints. Hunter, okay, again, we're pre-recording, so we don't know how the Green Bay game turned out. I got a prediction for the Green Bay game, and you can say what you think it is as well. But aside from the Green Bay game, what do you see in the team so far this year?
Well, it's definitely a new team, and they're having to get adjusted a little bit here and there, not only with the signal caller Derek Carr, but obviously the offensive unit as a whole. They need to work on not only improving the running game, which in the last game against Carolina, Pete Carmichael, the offensive coordinator, really put his foot on effort to make sure that we ran the ball halfway decent. I say we, but the Saints organization. The Saints organization, that they ran the ball at least, I'm not necessarily sure the number, but I think it was around close to 25, 30 times a game, whether it be Jamal Williams, whether it be Roy Jones Jr. Or Tony Jones Jr., I'm sorry. And that level is trying to kind of balance the game. And we had Taysom. Taysom is a great player. It's a great ability to have somebody that can do one bit of everything on the team, not only on offense but on defense and special teams, even though he didn't play defense. But you know what I'm saying there, Ricky. That being said, in my mind, the most improvement that we need is an offensive line. Me being a former offensive line coach, and I'm not trying to justify my bit over Doug Marrone or any of those other guys. What I'm just saying is they're seeing video. The players are seeing video. What plays we have to make to keep making drives, to keep lasting, lasting plays, to keep moving forward at every play. And unfortunately, in a couple series, which have become, detrimental to us a few times. But luckily, it's like Carr said yesterday at the press conference. The best thing about it, well, not yesterday, on Monday, he said, the best thing about it for us is that we're 2-0. We've got a whole lot of improvement to do, but we're 2-0, and that's where we want to be.
So again, we're recording this before Monday. We don't have the benefit of knowing how the Green Bay game turned out. What's your prediction on the Green Bay game?
I'm going to predict the Saints win the game, but I'm going to predict that it's going to be a close one because you have an offensive unit with Green Bay, Jordan Love, who hasn't really been tested yet by a defensive unit. Even though he's played a couple of games, he hasn't been tested by the Saints-level defensive unit. And there could be the big key for the Saints is that they make some turnovers. And that's going to help them, at least offensively. They'll be able to get a little bit of production. I would say you're looking at probably a 20-17 game.
Okay, so let me give you my take, and I may be totally wrong. Okay, you're the expert. Jeff Duncan's the expert. I've had the opportunity to learn from you guys every step of the way, and it's been awesome to have some of that insider information. But here's my prediction. I think that the Saints win the Green Bay game, and I think what happens in this game is first of all, I think Tony Jones Jr. is going to play a big role in this game. He ran pretty good. He didn't have a ton of yards, but where he played a really big role in the game, in the second game, was his blocking. I saw a takeout of his blocking. He was unbelievable the way that he was able to sort of fortify the offensive line. The other thing is that we've had some challenges with Trevor Penning, but in the second game, Trevor Penning played a better game. It's the overall offensive line had some challenges. As you saw, the same way as in the first game. The same thing happened in the second game. They made adjustments in the second half, and they played better in the second half. Some of those adjustments is the way they used tight ends. Some of it's the way they used Tony Jones Jr. to stay back and block. We wish we didn't have to do that because that sort of takes the tight ends out of the usually tight ends actually would be playing hugely into the Saints offense, but that's not happening right now. I think the offensive line is going to play better, and I think they're going to continue to supplement however they can. They've been out of rhythm, man. I think part of the problem was at the Monday night game they played too conservative, and they still, they're kind of hanging in there. They're going to make those couple of big plays, and that kind of changes the course of history for them. But I don't think anyone argues that the Saints, when their offensive line is playing well, as this is certainly true of Trevor Penning, they do pretty good run blocking, and then you're starting to see the stars starting to emerge. Already, Michael Thomas is playing better. Okay, Sheed he's got to be more than just a one or two trick pony. We need to get him into the game. You've got our other receivers that are just. Come on, man. We got three of the best receivers in the NFL, don't we?
Well, let me tell you, one of the things that I wrote about, Ricky, in the SuperTalk piece that I wrote a few days ago, two of the explosive plays that we had the whole game that I think changed the momentum, not only of the game, but could potentially change it for the way we're looking for the season, is the Olave one-handed catch, and Shaheed getting the ball on 45. It got for 45 yards, but that set up a position for another touchdown. We need explosive plays like that to make sure that the Saints win the football game.
And don't forget the buttocks catch, Michael Thomas's buttock catch. That was an unbelievable catch.
It was.
And it didn't look like he was in. It turns out he was in. It was just an incredible catch. But you start seeing, our stars, from Olave to Sheed to Michael Thomas. You haven't seen Graham get in there yet. Our other tight end. You starting to see Taysom Hill kind of come together. See, what I think's got to happen, man. I think Carr's got to play better. I
would agree with you, and I think he thinks that as well. He's trying to get adjusted to, who he has. And I think, it's different in a preseason contest versus playing, man-to-man ball or with zone coverages, which they've been pitching a lot for zone coverages because they can cover easily out. And you can't see, like the interception he threw, it was in the zone coverage. You can't see that linebacker, cutting across with a linebacker picking up on the interception. But one of the things I'll tell you, Ricky, that Olave play, that one-handed catch, that was huge. That made a big, for not only huge for the team, but for Carr himself. That really helped him, say, okay, we're good. We got this going.
Well, people say that he's building confidence with the team, and I definitely see that. I mean, and then you have an offensive coordinator that is still trying to put his fingerprint on it. He said going into the season they're going to be riskier. I haven't seen that yet. So, what I think we're going to see is the offensive line is going to play better. The defense is elite. As long as we don't get any big injuries, they're just going to get better, man. They're going to get better.
The best defense in the NFL.
Yeah, so they're going to get better. I think that they're going to shut down Green Bay. That's what I think is going to happen, and I think we're going to open up the offense more. We're going to see. We haven't even done the screen pass. We
Sure.
did that so well during preseason. Tony Jones Jr. is actually a good receiver, so maybe we'll start to see the screen pass come around. Certainly, we can use that with Taysom Hill as well. But I think they saw some things in that game that frustrated. I'm saying the Saints leadership saw some things in that game where they left points on the board. They missed some opportunities. They played a little bit too conservative. They held on to the ball too long. They didn't get rid of it fast enough, which enabled those 4 sacks to happen. I think they fix a lot of it. It ain't going to be perfect. I think they're still going to make some mistakes. But I think when we're talking about this on Monday, I mean, this is my bold prediction. I think we hold them to maybe 1 touchdown and a couple of field goals, and I think we score some points this game. I think we opened it up, and we got Sheed's going to break away for a big one. Maybe we get a pick 6. I mean, they're licking their chops at the possibility of getting a pick 6. Maybe Shaheed, returns a punt, but I think there's going to be we haven't had big plays like that yet. It's just a matter of time that's going to happen. And Derek Carr is frustrated. He knows he's got to play better. Offensive line is frustrated. They know they got to play better. The stars are emerging. We just got to get the ball in their hands. I think it's going to happen at Green Bay. Now, look, I may be eating crow by the time this plays, but that's where that's my objective view. I'm not saying it just from a fan's point of view. That's what I observe.
I like Carmichael's point of view, though, especially against rookie quarterbacks like Bryce Young. And, this one, Jordan Love, who's essentially a rookie quarterback because he's been sitting out for 3 years. I really think that, using the running game, especially in Lambeau, even though it's not cold yet, I think having Taysom is a special opportunity.
Woo, buddy! They couldn't stop Taysom Hill. Taysom Hill is a load, man. And when he runs the ball, we win, buddy. The facts are there. We got to get him in the game more. We can't mess around about that. Hey, when we come back, we'll continue our conversation with Hunter Dawkins, the president and owner and publisher of the Gazebo Gazette. We'll see you after this. Welcome back to the Ricky Mathews Show. I have my friend Hunter Dawkins from the Gazebo Gazette. We're going to shift gears now. Hunter and I have had lots of conversations about lots of different things, but I think one of the most important conversations we've had in the past month or two has been around this notion about healthcare and improving the healthcare system in Mississippi. I'm a major proponent. I'm conservative. I'm a Republican usually. I'm a major proponent that we've got to get our arms around Medicaid expansion. Now, there's no such thing as a free $1 billion. It doesn't work that way. But boy, we've been saying no year after year to approximately $1 billion. There's a role that Mississippi plays in that, but at the end of the day, that would make a huge difference in the overall conversation. You see a Speaker of the House coming from a rural area who are potentially future Speaker of the House, Jason White, who has said, we got to have the conversation. You've got a lieutenant governor who's saying, we got to have the conversation. So even if, let's say Presley were to get elected, he could sign an administrative order, but he's still got to have appropriations in order to make the match that has to occur to make that money work. He still has to have help from the legislature. I had a great conversation last week with John John Hairston, the president and CEO of Hancock Whitney, and John said that, there's no such thing as free money, and at the same time, we can't make it the boogeyman. I mean, that's something we got to quit doing. He said, look, if we need to make this an economic development, a financial conversation, and a healthcare conversation, and bring bipartisan people to the table, and bring the business community to the table, and figure out what is the hybrid approach that Mississippi can take that will please everybody, and quit saying we're not going to do it. That's not a good answer anymore, because I think up to 7 Republican states have accepted the money now. So the reality is we got to figure out how a poor state like Mississippi, with 51% of our people living in rural areas, where hospitals are closing across the state and the level of care is declining rapidly, we got to figure this out. And I thought what John said is right. I mean, that we've got to quit going to our corners, come together, and let's start talking about this in the right terms and take the politics out of it. I mean, we've said this 100 times, but it's good to see you're starting to see movement in that direction to some extent, aren't you?
Well, Ricky, and I'm going to continue to go back to you on this, because I know this is a big issue for you, not only this Medicaid expansion, but this was one of the biggest past issues for you. Look at yourself after Hurricane Katrina and what you had to be able to do to produce so we could build this community back. And that's essentially what we need for the entire state of Mississippi. And there's this fear out there that, if we accept this money, there's going to be a huge rate increase in taxes and this, that, and the other. But if you don't do this, you're just going to cause closures of hospitals, things as such. I think you, especially you, Ricky, I think you see that this has got to be taken a risk for, because if you don't, there could be something you're not going to take advantage of.
Well, yeah, what I believe, and I mean, listen, this is an easy thing to say because it's true, and that is lives are at stake. Lives in rural areas of the state are at stake because they can't get adequate care quick enough. You can't just do Medicaid expansion. We need to have a conversation in the state about where are the triage facilities. Those might be hospitals. They might be some type of other facility. And what is the relationship between those facilities in these rural areas and the trauma centers? What's that relationship? But just closing hospitals, and then Greenwood Hospital, the hospital that I have access to when I'm up there in the Mississippi Delta, Greenwood Hospital is on the brink of closing itself. There's too many people in these regions of the state that depend on that hospital for care. We cannot keep closing hospitals and think everything's okay. And the financial benefits that Medicaid expansion will do in terms of helping so many uninsured losses that these hospitals are bearing is a very big part of the conversation, but it's not the only thing. You can't just do that in a vacuum. We need to have a broader, Katrina-like effort that involves bipartisan discussions and find the solution once and for all.
Well, Ricky, and also looking at it from a different perspective, I of course had my experience in Washington, D.C. for about 7 years, and I still have access to some of those Congressional Research Service reports, and I'm over here looking at what can this do for our economy, and that's obviously something that's the big question. Everybody's asking the question, well, is this going to make it worse or better? On this Congressional Research Service report that I read, this is up to adding quite a number of jobs. And these are jobs the hospital need to have people back, have nurses back, instead of, having to pay travel nurses buttloads of money. They can have their own nurses in their facilities. And these nurses don't want, not all of them, some of them, of course, are young and they want to be able to travel, but a lot of them have families already. They don't want to be able to go through this.
Well, the economic development benefit that came from Louisiana and other states is very significant, and you cannot overcome that. And that's why you cannot overstate that. But that's why John Harrison said, let's make it about finances, let's make it about economic development, and let's make it about health care, and not about politics, and then maybe we can get where we need to be. Hey, listen, we'll continue that part of the conversation. It's just ongoing. I do like that there's some cracks in the slab. It looks like we're at least leaning in that direction to have those conversations. conversations. That's what we really need to do. Hunter, it's been a pleasure, my friend.
Thank you, Ricky. It's always a pleasure with you, and I hope everything goes well for your family. During
you bet. Thank you, my friend. You bet. Thank you. We'll see you soon. This has been Hunter Dawkins, and we'll see you tomorrow.